Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlotte and these are my shelves. As you can probably tell from the title of this video, today I will be filming and creating a dark academia themed night in. I wanted to organise and curate a fun reading experience for myself as I've been in a reading slump recently, and I was hoping by romanticising the reading experience it would help me get out of my slump, but it would also be a little bit more creative. It would help me be a bit more playful with some of the books that I've got to read on my TBR at the moment, and I will be taking you along with me as we try to have the peak dark academia experience. If you're new to my channel, I've been on a book buying ban for all of 2026 so far, but towards the tail end of March, I slid into a reading slump. And this is my not so original idea to try and get me out of that slump, but to make reading a tiny bit more fun. And this was also because one of the books on my TBR is probably one of the most peak dark academia themed books that I could probably read or think of. So please like, comment and subscribe and we will get started. Firstly, in case you aren't aware of what dark academia is, I'm going to briefly describe what it is in a literary sense. It has been a trend and a movement for the last, I want to say like 10 years or so now on the internet, but also in the book world, and it is characterised by the romanticisation of intellectual pursuits. It is a trend that also influences literature, but also the arts. There's a lot of dark academia Pinterest lookbooks that you can find, so it's very much an aesthetic movement as much as it is a literary movement. But one of the central themes is that knowledge, academia and intelligence is kind of central to the genre. Studying and education is highly revered, and as a result a lot of the books and works that are deemed dark academia are characterised by being in places of academia. So universities, colleges, libraries, museums, or our characters come from an academic background or have academic leanings. They often study English literature, classics like classical civilization, classical literature, Greek languages, art, poetry. There is additionally a strong value on one's own intellectual ability. Some of the examples of dark academia that I have read also revolve normally around a group of friends who are equally brilliant, or kind of forming their own mini intelligentsia groups. And even if they're slightly outside of academic circumstances, they are often immersed in study, in learning. The darker aspect of dark academia comes from a darkness in the sense of tone or subject matter that also runs parallel alongside the academic aspects of these books, films, poetry. There is imagery of decay or secrecy, sometimes even murder. This is a genre that has a darker underbelly than is perhaps initially shown when you first start a book of this kind. Old university campus buildings, period homes, gothic architecture. Dark academia also touches on themes of sometimes mental health, madness, isolation, intellectual failings, or why it is dangerous to pursue intellectual knowledge to a certain degree. But also there is a miscellany of dark, macabre things that go on in some of these works. Knowledge is arguably the focus of dark academia, and it is almost seductively central to a lot of these plot lines. The top 3 books that I see most characterised as being dark academia on BookTube, for example, I would say is Donna Tartt's The Secret History, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. Some of my personal dark academia favourites that I have read: Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. That's the most dark academia work, and it's just a solid 5-star. You can't go wrong with that. Babel by R.F. Kuang, Frankenstein definitely, and I think even Dracula could be perceived as dark academia, but don't hold me on that. And then a thriller I read a few years back called In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. Okay, so to curate the perfect evening in, I think there are 5 or 6 things that I want to consider. Setting, timing, lighting, drink and food, our choice of outfit of course, and most importantly, the book that we're going to be reading tonight. So firstly, setting. We will be hosting this evening as such in my home. I currently reside in an old, crumbling, falling down Victorian house, and I think a period property from that era is perfectly dark academia. Period homes have a lot of gentle worn edges or are in need of renovation like mine, but also because there's a real sense of history when you are fortunate enough to own a older property. We are still very lucky to have multiple fireplaces here and some of the ceiling crowns and little period feature details that add character and beauty to our home. We're going to be setting up in my little reading nook in the corner of my living room. This also houses the majority of my books, and this is my own sort of personal library, so that kind of matches the academia library theme, but also nods to my own academic background. Dark academia books also romanticize solitude, so the fact that we're alone in our home and sitting down to read and study in a quiet corner just kind of perfectly matches that aesthetic. Timing. I'm going to do this in the evening because I think the darkness of night would be perfect. It is a very bright spring day. It is in the 20s here in England, which is very warm for us. But alas, we march relentlessly into summer. So we will be preparing and waiting until the sun has gone down. Hopefully the darkness of night is going to really cement the overall aesthetic. So that brings us to lighting. Once it's dark, I'm gonna light lots of little tea lights and candles. I've got some candlesticks as well on my fireplace that I think will be really nice to add a glow and some ambience. And I can't think of anything more spooky and perfect and creepy than pairing what I'm about to read this evening by reading it at candlelight. Next is food and drink. All I could think of was like black coffee and lots of herbal teas and warm mugs of a nice drink while you're reading or studying. That was certainly a lot of my experience when I was a student and even when I worked in academia. And I was thinking a really nice snack could be some dark chocolate. But I was also considering, I was also given a bottle of alcohol-free red wine, and I thought a nice glass of like alcohol-free red wine with some dark chocolate whilst I'm reading and studying, that could be really lovely, and that'd be quite nice as part of the overall reading experience. The penultimate thing we need to consider is our outfit, because if you are having a dark academia themed night in, you cannot be in your fluffy Nightmare Before Christmas pajamas. You just can't. And so I've gone for this little blouse, which was very much the kind of thing I would wear when I was a librarian. I kind of like these little frills. They kind of look a little bit period, and then a little puffy sleeve you cannot go wrong with. And I'm going to pair this with some black velvet corduroy trousers, and they're very soft and comfortable, and I'll be able to cozy up in them when I get into my reading nook. Currently, because it is very warm, I will be transparent with you, I am wearing some biker lycra shorts because it is too hot right now to be wearing corduroy, but by the time the sun goes down, hopefully it will be cool enough. Finally, what I wanted to share with you is what we are reading tonight. The text we will be reading is The Raven and Other Poems by Edgar Allan Poe, and this edition is spectacular, and this was kind of what inspired me to start off this whole night. It is beautiful, and I cannot wait to get started on this. I haven't reread any poetry by Poe in a really long time. Last Halloween I did read a selection of his short stories. I also read a depressing but wonderful biography of Poe by Peter Ackroyd, and that made me want to revisit some of his works. It will also mean that we tick one more book off our TBR. I think I am down to about 12 or 13 books left on my physical TBR, which is very exciting. I wanted to share with you why I feel like Poe is one of the most fitting authors that we can go into a dark academia themed night. I felt like the darkness that is embodied in his writing was a perfect match, and although dark academia was not around as a concept or an aesthetic movement when he was alive, little did he know he would really become the embodiment of this genre. I think this is also obvious in the tone of his work, and also that he is writing. It's generally perceived as highbrow. It's an academic style of writing. Particularly I'm thinking of The Telltale Heart, Murders in the Rue Morgue, The Red Mask. All of these short stories and poetry pieces explore the themes that are related to dark academia. That is including, you know, darkness, death, obsession, and the macabre. And I feel like his poetry and his writing has an iconic gothic heaviness. His works also have an intellectual intensity that is unique and also I think typified by dark academia. Additionally, if you know anything about Poe's life, you know that he is this extraordinarily troubled and dark, tragic figure, and that's also mirrored in his writing. He is the embodiment of the tortured yet brilliant writer. There's such a sadness to reading about his life, let alone the contents of what he created. I think Poe could arguably be one of the greatest inspirations for dark academia, and perhaps if there was a literary mascot of sorts, Poe would probably be up there. He would be a good nomination. Next time we touch base, it will hopefully be dark, and we'll be setting up our evening for our cozy dark academia themed night in.
So I'm going to briefly show you a couple of items of decor we already own in the house that kind of match the theme of the evening. And whilst we are also getting ready, I wanted to give you a very, very brief overview of Poe's personal biography to show more reasons why I think he is the perfect dark academia mascot. And all of this information comes from Peter Ackroyd's biography, Poe, A Life Cut Short. So as many of you probably know, Poe was struck with tragedy early in his life. His mother died when he was only 2 years old, and his mother had shortly abandoned them before that. Both his parents were actors, and the family that he was brought into, or fostered by rather, were John Allen and Frances Allen. They lived a very different kind of lifestyle, and it should have been one of stability, but Poe never truly became a part of their family, and it was very clear that there was a disconnect in their relationship. And as Poe grew older, his relationship with John Allen, the father figure, became very strained. As a result of Poe's actions, or perhaps because of their relationship, financial support for Poe was often inconsistent. Poe had started writing when he was a teenager, but tried to go to the University of Virginia for about a year before he was expelled. He had also fallen heavily into gambling debt and was forced to leave. This marked the start of his lifelong financial instability. Even as an adult, Poe struggled to make enough money to financially support himself and his wife and family. And before he seriously took writing under consideration, he even attended the United States Military Academy and was eventually expelled from that too. Although his writing brought the recognition that he craved, it did not bring that financial security.
Good evening. It is a few hours, well, several hours later, and we finally have some darkness. The sun is going down. Hello, Sophie. And we're going to get ready. So let's get our alcohol-free red wine, our dark chocolate. Let's light some candles and let's get some reading in.
The biography was starting to give me a picture of Poe's life that was largely shaped by loss, by hardship, by mystery, but also addiction. So much of the biography refers to Poe being ill or being heavily influenced by alcohol and his addiction habits. And I think that may have fed into issues he had with his family, but also his money, his spending, his illness, and a lot of issues that later came in life. Throughout his life, Poe did write to his family asking for money, and I don't think that could have been an easy thing to do, but also it could have been easy for them to try and support him, knowing perhaps that he was unwell, but also dealing with an alcohol problem. For most of his life, Poe did live in near constant poverty, and it caused a great amount of distress and anxiety for him, as it would, well, for any of us really. Eventually, Poe's family cut him off, and he was struck with further tragedy when his young wife, Virginia Eliza Clem Poe, passed away from tuberculosis in 1847. Her death devastated him, worsened his struggles with grief as he had lost other family members and friends, but also his depression and his alcohol, and we start to see more of his previous battles with mental health and low mood really become exacerbated. The biography again kind of talked about how perhaps aspects of his addiction exacerbated the issues of family, money, career instability, grief, and this perhaps played a major factor in his decline. Poe passed away in 1849, and his life ended kind of as mysteriously as some of his works did as such, and it was just as troubled. He was found delirious on the streets of Baltimore and died only a few days later, and the cause to this day still remains unknown. There's a really good BuzzFeed Unsolved true crime podcast episode on YouTube where they show 3 or 4 different theories about which pathway it could have been that Poe went down that eventually led to his death, because we don't know. If you love literary history but also true crime, it's quite a good intersection and quite a good episode to listen or watch to. But from his life of just pure tragedy, some of the darkest, most gothic, enduring, and I think beautiful works of literature are proof that even in suffering, Poe created this incredible, lasting literary legacy.
Good evening. So we have added some real ambience to this room, and I am loving it. Normally we use our coloured bulbs or this many candles kind of around Halloween and autumn, so it's giving me a very autumnal Halloween, just gentle candlelight, soft, beautiful, but I am very much enjoying this ambience. I am about halfway through my Poe, reading Edgar Allan Poe, and there was a poem I hadn't read in years called Annabel Lee, and I feel like that's probably one of his most famous but also saddest works, and there's a line in it which you don't realise how often it is quoted in popular culture, and he describes her as we loved with a love that was more than love. I'm sure I've seen that on like cheesy prints at like TK Maxx or somewhere, but you forget that this is like where some of that beautiful romantic language has come from in our culture. I'm really appreciating how, if pervasive is the right word, how commonly Poe is quoted in popular culture. Like the first time I ever actually, like truthfully, the first time I ever came across Poe was in The Simpsons, and it was in the very first Treehouse of Horror in the, I think, mid-90s, and Bart was the Raven and Homer was the character being driven mad, screaming nevermore. It is just refreshing for me how much, a bit like Shakespeare, you don't realise how many phrases and idioms are borrowed from these writers' works, and rereading this has just given me such a refresher of my appreciation of his work. This dark chocolate as well is phenomenal. It was given to me, I think I already said, at Easter. I'm just having a couple of these, my red wine, and just carving out this time to sit and read has been wonderful. I really recommend this. Like, it doesn't have to be like a genre, dark academia themed evening, but if you can just give yourself 2 hours out of an evening one night this week and just sit and really romanticize life, like really romanticize the art of book reading and be mindful and purposeful with carving out some reading time, I would absolutely recommend it. I'm going to finish reading through this. I would like to do one pass, and then I'm going to go back through, flag up which ones I'd like to annotate, and then if I have some time before bed I will then start going in with my pen and my highlighter, and that's when I like to go back through and start doing more like close textual analysis, which I'm really looking forward to doing. There is one poem so far that I have not enjoyed, and that is a very long poem. I think it might be his longest poem, or at least in this collection it is, Al-Araf or Al-Araf, and it's almost like a, I don't know if it's a ballad, what is it, like an epic? It's very dry and very overwrought, and it was one of the few where I felt like my eyes were starting to slip off the page a bit with it, and some of the references in it I just did not understand, which is why some close textual reading later will be useful.
I wanted to read you a poem that I've really loved from this collection. It is called A Dream, and it has a really lovely meter and sort of musical quality to it, but is also so stereotypically Poe, I couldn't not share it. In visions of the dark night, I have dreamed of joy departed, but a waking dream of life and light have left me broken-hearted. Ah, what is not a dream by day to him whose eyes are cast on things around him with a ray turned back upon the past? That holy dream, while all the world were chiding, have cheered me as a lovely beam, a lonely spirit guiding. What though that light through storm and night so trembled from afar? What could there be more purely bright in truth's day star?
This particular candle that I've got lit, which is casting me in all sorts of weird shadows, it's scented. It's like an old pillar candle that I had yonks ago, and it smells like bonfire and tobacco and smoke, and it's giving such like a, it's really adding to the ambience of like old pages and leather books and all that kind of thing, because at first I thought it was this when I was reading it. This has a gorgeous leather scent to its pages, but this is something else. It's really reminding me of Halloween, because I had 3 big pillar candles like this, I think, yeah, it must have been at Halloween, and I really love this scent, and it's giving me all the spooky vibes, which is so perfect. I just wanted to say thank you for joining me in this slightly different style of video today and just getting some reading in. I hope that you are able to carve out some time for yourself this week, whether you get all the additional tea lights and sweet treats and things to help you enjoy your reading experience, but I hope that this inspires you to put some time aside and just crack on with your TBR. I am going to carry on reading. I think overall this is a solid 4 stars.